What if Goku was the Saiyan Emperor of Heaven and Hell? Goku X Chi Chi X Android 21. Chapter 1. The Emperor's Balance. The light of 1,000 suns could not match the brilliance of the Imperial Pavilion. Gold and platinum spiraled upward in impossible architectures, defying the very laws of physics as structures bent and flowed like liquid metal frozen in time. Above it all hung 3 moons, one pearlescent white, one crimson as fresh blood, and one the deepest obsidian that seemed to devour light rather than reflect it. Emperor Goku stood motionless at the edge of his balcony, gazing not at the splendor before him but at the subtle distortion in the fabric of reality barely visible on the horizon. To mortal eyes, it would appear as nothing more than heat shimmer, a mirage born of distance and atmospheric conditions. But Goku was no mortal. The Saiyan Emperor's heightened senses detected the wrongness in it, the cosmic equivalent of a scab being slowly picked away. The boundary weakens again, he said, voice carrying an authority that came not from volume but from absolute certainty. Whis, his celestial advisor, materialized silently beside him, staff gleaming with ethereal light. The third occurrence this cycle, Your Majesty. The pattern accelerates. Goku's tail, a mark of his Saiyan heritage, unwrapped from his waist and lashed once in irritation. Unlike the golden regalia that adorned his powerful frame, the tail was entirely his own, a reminder of what he was beneath the mantle of Emperor. Summon the courts, Goku commanded, turning away from the vista. Both of them, simultaneously. Whis raised a delicate eyebrow, the only indication of his surprise. That hasn't been done since the Convergence Wars, I know. Goku's obsidian eyes hardened. We face something equally threatening, though few realize it yet. The Emperor strode into his chambers, the air around him humming with barely contained energy. He had not risen from common warrior to ruler of both heaven and hell by ignoring his instincts, and every fiber of his being resonated with warning. As he moved, his attire transformed, responding to his will. The formal golden raiment of heaven's court melded with the obsidian armor favored in hell's domains, creating a synthesis unique to his station, black plate armor with golden veins that pulsed with living light, flowing like magma beneath cooled earth. Your celestial representatives will protest, Whis observed, floating beside him through corridors that constantly shifted, connecting different regions of reality according to the Emperor's needs. They still maintain that hell's denizens are fundamentally lesser beings. Goku's laugh was short and sharp. And hell's lord's belly, Eve heaven's court to be pampered weaklings. Both sides are wrong, and right. That's precisely why I rule both. They emerged into the Grand Imperial Forum, a vast amphitheater that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. From one perspective, it appeared as a gleaming coliseum of marble and light, from another, a cavernous chamber carved from volcanic rock illuminated by rivers of lava. The reality was both, and neither, a space that transcended simple categorization. Already, figures were appearing, materializing through portals, teleporting in flashes of divine light, or ascending through pools of shadow. The representatives of heaven took their places on seats of crystalline clarity to Goku's right, while hell's emissaries gathered on obsidian thrones to his left. Between them wretched an emptiness that few dared cross. Goku ascended to his throne, a seemingly simple seat carved from a material that appeared different to each observer. He did not sit immediately, instead standing before the gathering courts, his presence commanding attention without effort. The barriers between realms weaken, he announced without preamble, his voice carrying to every corner of the forum. This is the third breach in a single cycle. Murmurs rippled through both courts. From heaven's side, a slender figure with halo-bright hair rose. Lord Zenith, representative of the seventh celestial harmony, folded his hands in a gesture of deference that didn't quite reach his eyes. With respect, Emperor, natural fluctuations in cosmic energies are well documented. The celestial archives record similar phenomena occurring in 12 millennium cycles. We have resources allocated to monitor. These are not natural fluctuations. The interruption came from the left, where a scarred warrior with skin like burnished copper had risen. General Pyrolus, commander of Hell's southern legions, bared teeth that gleamed like metal. Our patrols have encountered void energies crystallizing at the breach points. Something is actively degrading the barriers. Zenith's expression tightened. Hell's patrols frequently mistake simple energy decay for malicious action. Perhaps if your Vers possessed proper training instead of brute force. Perhaps if your head wasn't so far up you're self-righteous. Enough. Goku didn't shout, but power laced his voice, a subtle flexing of energy that made the air itself vibrate. Both representatives fell silent immediately. I have observed the disturbances myself. They are deliberate, coordinated, and escalating. He raised his hand, palm upward. Above it materialized a perfect miniature of the three realms, heaven, hell, and between them, the thin layer that was the mortal realm. Tiny fissures appeared in the boundaries, pulsing with sickly light. These breaches appeared sequentially, forming a pattern. The model rotated, connecting the fissures with lines of energy. A geometric shape emerged, a symbol that caused gasps from the elder members of both courts. Yes, some of you recognize this configuration. It is the seal of convergence. Whis stepped forward, staff tapping once against the forum floor. For those unfamiliar with ancient history, the seal was last employed during the Convergence Wars, when certain factions attempted to merge the realms forcibly. Millions of souls across all domains were obliterated in the resulting chaos. Silence descended upon the forum, heavy with implication. Even the most contentious representatives seemed sobered by this revelation. A soft voice spoke from heaven's side, Archivist Seraphina, oldest of the celestial representatives, her form barely corporeal with age. The seal requires 7 anchor points to fully activate. You have shown us 3. Goku nodded once. The a turn suggests the 4th breach will manifest in the mortal realm itself. I will investigate personally. This announcement caused immediate uproar from both courts. The Emperor cannot risk himself in the mortal realm. Send the Cosmic Guard instead. This requires a full celestial intervention team. Hell's legions should secure the breach point. Goku remained standing, immovable as the arguments washed around him. When he'd heard enough, he didn't speak, he simply allowed a fraction of his true power to manifest. The air crackled with energy that was neither purely celestial nor entirely infernal, but a synthesis unique to him. Both courts fell silent as the pressure of his unleashed power pressed against them. I did not convene this gathering to request permission, he said calmly, reining his energy back until it was merely a golden crimson aura surrounding his form. I am informing you of my decision. During my absence, both courts will cooperate to reinforce the existing breach points. He turned his gaze to heaven's representatives. Your scholars will analyze the energy signatures and develop containment protocols. Then to hell's emissaries, your forces will implement those protocols and defend the weakened boundaries against any incursions. Before further protests could erupt, Goku raised his hand. This is not a request. This is my command as Emperor of both realms. Work together, or there may not be realms left to govern. He descended from the dais, the courts parting before him. Whis, prepare for immediate departure. We leave for the mortal realm as soon as the forum concludes. As he strode toward the exit, a voice called out, one that had remained silent until now. Emperor Goku. He turned. At the far end of Hell's section stood a figure, re-shrouded in crimson smoke. Lady Mephisto, representative of Hell's deepest circle and one of the few beings who had witnessed the previous Convergence War firsthand. The seal's activation requires blood sacrifice at each breach point, she said, her voice like stone grinding against stone. If the 4th breach appears in the mortal realm, mortals will die. Many of them. Goku's expression hardened. Then I will need to arrive before the sacrifice can be completed. With that, he exited the forum, leaving the courts to their deliberations. In the private corridor beyond, Whis awaited. They will argue for hours. The celestial advisor observed. Let them, Goku replied. Arguments between heaven and hell are preferable to open conflict. Besides, by the time they reach a consensus, we'll have already addressed the immediate threat. Whis smiled faintly. You've become quite the politician, Your Majesty. A far cry from the warrior who initially seized both thrones. I'm still that warrior. Goku flexed his hand, energy crackling between his fingers. I've just learned when fighting is necessary and when words serve better. Prepare our transit to the mortal realm, focus on the region called Earth. Northern Hemisphere, specifically the area their inhabitants call Mount Paozu. The dimensional thinning is most pronounced there. As you command. Whis paused. Will you acquire battle attire or diplomatic regalia? Goku's smile held no humor. Both. I expect to need either at a moment's notice. Dash dash dash. Chi-Chi wiped sweat from her brow as she completed the 77th repetition of the Guardian's kata. Her movements precise despite hours of continuous practice. The ancient temple grounds around her remained silent except for the whisper of her bare feet agains. Chi-stone worn smooth by generations of guardians before her. The final position required her to hold perfect balance on one leg, arms extended in a warding gesture while channeling her ki through specific meridian points. She maintained the stance, breath even, muscles burning with effort. Only when the sun touched the edge of the western mountains did she release the posture, exhaling slowly. An other day of training completed, training for a duty that most believed was mere superstition in the modern world. If only they knew. Chi-Chi moved to the temple's central courtyard, where a small street. One basin captured the last rays of sunlight. The water within, collected from the first spring rain of the year, remained perfectly still until she passed her hand over it. Ripples formed without her touching the surface, spreading outward in concentric circles. "Show me," she commanded softly. The water clouded, then cleared to reveal not a reflection but an image of Mount Paozu's forested slopes. Chi-Chi focused, directing the scrying to the areas she'd sensed disturbances during her morning meditation. The vision shifted, zooming toward a particular clearing high on the mountain's eastern face. What she saw made her blood run cold. The air itself seemed torn, a vertical laceration in reality approximately 7 feet tall. Around it, the vegetation had withered in a perfect circle, within that circle stood 5 robed figures. They were arranging stones in a pattern Chi-Chi recognized immediately from the ancient texts in the temple library. "No," she whispered, "they can't possibly understand what they're doing." One of the figures produced a knife that gleamed unnaturally in the fading light. Another led a bound villager into the circle, a young man Chi-Chi recognized from the marketplace in the valley below. There was no time to waste. Chi-Chi sprang to her feet and raced to the temple's inner chamber. Unlike the austere training grounds, this room contained the Gu Ardian Order's treasures, artifacts accumulated over thousands of years of vigilance. She moved unerringly to an ornate chest, speaking words in a language no longer known in the mortal realm. The locks disengaged, revealing her inheritance. The power pole, an extendable staff said to connect heaven, earth, and hell, and the battle raiment, armor woven from materials not found in the mortal world. Chi-Chi dressed swiftly, her movements practiced. The armor, despite its ancient origins, fit her perfectly, responding to her body's contours as though alive. Unlike bulky traditional armor, the la raiment resembled a streamlined fighting GI, deep blue with crimson accents and golden characters inscribed along the hems. It weighed almost nothing but had withstood direct blows from demons in previous generations. She secured the power pole across her back and grabbed a small pouch of specialized tools, sealing talismans, barrier dust, and emergency medical supplies. As guardian, she was prepared for many contingencies. But what she'd witnessed in the scrying basin went beyond typical boundary infractions. Someone was attempting to create a permanent breach between realms. Chi-Chi Pao said only long enough to activate the temple's defensive wards before racing down the mountain path. The temple disappeared behind her, cloaked in illusions that made it appear as nothing more than an unremarkable outcropping of rock. She ran with supernatural speed, channeling ki to her legs in a technique perfected over years of training. Trees blurred past as she descended the winding path, cutting across switchbacks with precisely calculated leaps that would have been impossible for an ordinary human. Night had fallen completely by the time she approached the clearing, slowing her pace to move silently through the underbrush. The scene before her confirmed her worst fears. The tear in reality had widened, now pulsing with sickly violet light. The 5 robed figures had completed their stone arrangement, a perfect heptagram inscribed within 3 concentric circles. At each point of the 7-pointed star burned a candle flame that defied the gentle breeze, each a different color not found in natural fire. The bound villager knelt at the center, eyes wide with terror as the apparent leader approached with the ritual knife. Chi-Chi didn't hesitate. She burst from cover, power pole already extending at her command. "Nioibo, extend," she shouted, channeling ki into the ancient weapon. The staff responded instantly, stretching across the clearing to strike the knife wielder. hand before he could complete the downward arc toward his victim. The blade went spinning away into the darkness as Chi-Chi herself followed, launching into a flying kick that connected solidly with the cult leader's chest. He flew backward with a satisfying thud, but the other four immediately responded, revealing they were far more than simple cultists. Two drew weapons that gleamed with unnatural energy, while the others began gesturing in complex patterns that stirred the air with gathering power. "Guardian," one hissed, voice distorted as though speaking through water. "Your kind should be extinct." Chi-Chi settled into a defensive stance, power pole held diagonally across her body. "We're harder to kill than you think." She struck first, knowing that defense against magical attacks often proved impossible. The power pole swept low, forcing the two weapon wielders to jump while Chi-Chi herself launched upward, driving her knee into one cultist's jaw with a satisfying crack. The other slashed at her with a blade that left trails of darkness in the air. Chi-Chi parried with the power pole, wincing as the contact sent painful vibrations through the staff. Not ordinary metal, then. The two spellcasters completed their incantation, sending twin bolts of crackling energy toward her. Chi-Chi spun the power pole in a defensive pattern taught by her father, creating a barrier that dispersed the energy, mostly. Enough leaked through to singe her left sleeve and send painful tingles along her arm. "You cannot stop the convergence," the leader called, having regained his footing. "The seal demands completion." Chi-Chi didn't waste breath responding. Instead, she reached into her pouch and flung barrier dust in a wide arc. The specialized powder ignited on contact with the unnatural energies, creating a momentary wall of blue flame that separated her from three of the cultists. She used the distraction to leap toward the bound villager, severing his bonds with a precise strike from the power pole. "Run," she commanded, straight down the mountain path. "Don't stop until you reach the village." The man scrambled to his feet, babbling thanks as he fled. One obstacle removed, the cultists couldn't complete their sacrifice without a victim. Or so she thought, until the leader laughed. "Any blood will do, Guardian. Yours will serve even better." The tear in reality pulsed, widening further. Through it, Chi-Chi glimpsed something that should not exist in the mortal realm, a landscape of impossible geometry, where mountains floated untethered and rivers flowed upward. The barrier dust's flames were fading. Chi-Chi readied herself for the next assault, knowing she was outnumbered and facing enemies with knowledge of forbidden arts. But the Guardian Order had not survived millennia by surrendering to impossible odds. The cultists attacked simultaneously, coordinating with practiced precision. Chi-Chi deflected, dodged, and counterattacked, the power pole becoming virtually invisible as it extended and retracted in response to her will. She broke the arm of one spellcaster and knocked another cultist unconscious with a strike to the temple, but the remaining three pressed their advantage. A blade sliced across her thigh, drawing blood that hissed when it struck the ground. The leader gestured, and Chi-Chi's blood rose in droplets, floating toward the tear in reality. "No," she lunged forward, but a binding spell caught her mid-movement, invisible chains constricting around her limbs. The leader approached, triumph evident despite his concealed face. "Your bloodline ends tonight, Guardian, but your sacrifice begins something magnificent." Chi-Chi struggled against the binding, channeling her ki to fight the unnatural restraints. They weakened slightly, enough for her to maintain a defensive grip on the power pole but not enough to attack. The tear in reality yawned wider as her blood droplets approached it. Chi-Chi redoubled her efforts, knowing what would happen if the ritual completed. Suddenly, the air pressure changed dramatically. The clearing fell utterly silent, as though the world itself held its breath. Even the cultists paused, looking skyward in confusion. A new light source illuminated the clearing, golden crimson radiance that seemed to bend around a point directly above the ritual site. Reality folded, twisted, and then tore open in a perfectly controlled manner, creating a gateway unlike the ragged breach the cultists had made. Through this new opening stepped a figure that radiated power on a scale Chi-Chi had never encountered. Tall, powerfully built, with unruly black hair that seemed to defy gravity and a tail that lashed once before wrapping around his waist. His attire combined elements that shouldn't exist together, ornate armor with flowing ceremonial elements, simultaneously martial and regal. Most striking were his eyes, obsidian depths that had witnessed eternity and remained unbroken by the experience. They surveyed the scene with calm assessment before focusing on the cultists with predatory intensity. The cult leader recovered first. The convergence comes. You cannot stop. He never finished the sentence. The newcomer moved with impossible speed, appearing directly before the leader. No blur of movement, no indication of the distance being crossed, simply there one instant and here the next. The convergence will not occur on my watch, the stranger said, voice resonant with authority. One hand closed around the cult leader's throat, lifting him effortlessly. The stranger studied him briefly, then sighed with what seemed like disappointment. Merely a pawn. Your master hasn't even shown you what you're truly summoning. With his free hand, the stranger reached toward the floating droplets of Chi-Chi's blood, which still hung suspended in the air. The droplets responded to his gesture, coalescing into a crimson sphere that orbited his fingers. Blood freely given has power. Blood taken by force merely corrupts. He closed his fist, and the blood ignited with golden flame, purified in an instant. The remaining cultists finally broke from their shock. Oh, Nei flung a spell of binding similar to what held Chi-Chi, while the other charged with his dark blade. The stranger didn't bother to dodge. The binding spell dissolved before touching him, and when the blade struck his armor, it shattered like glass. With economical movements, he dispatched both attackers, not killing them, Chi-Chi noted, but rendering them as unconscious as their companions. ONL. Why then did he turn his attention to the tear in reality? A crude attempt, he observed, approaching the breach, but dangerous nonetheless. He raised both hands, and energy gathered between them, not the chaotic power of the cultists, but something ordered yet immensely more potent. Golden light spiraled with crimson darkness, forming a perfect sphere of balanced energies. By my authority as Emperor of Heaven and Hell, I seal this breach. He thrust the energy sphere into the tear. For a moment, the entire clearing blazed with light bright enough that Chi-Chi had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, the tear was gone, reality mended without a scar. Only then did the stranger turn to her, head tilting slightly as he studied the binding spell that still held her. A guardian, he said, recognition in his voice. I thought your order faded centuries ago. With a casual gesture, he dissolved the binding spell. Chi-Chi dropped to a defensive stance immediately, power pole, held ready despite her rational mind screaming that this being could obliterate her with a thought if he wished. Who are you? She demanded, proud that her voice remained steady. A smile touched his lips, unexpectedly genuine, transforming his imposing presence into something almost approachable. I have many titles, he replied, but you may call me Goku. And you are? Chi-Chi, 43rd Guardian of the Eastern Boundary. She maintained her stance. You claim to be Emperor of Heaven and Hell. That's impossible. No single entity rules both realms. None did before me, he acknowledged. The situation is unique. He gestured to the unconscious cultists. More pressing is who sent these pawns and what they hope to accomplish by activating the seal of convergence. Chi-Chi's eyes widened. You know of the seal. I fought in the war it last triggered. His expression darkened momentarily, ancient memory clouding his features. Millions died across all realms. Chi-Chi slowly lowered her weapon, medical training asserting itself as she noticed blood still seeping from her thigh wound. She reached for a bandage from her pouch, but before she could apply it, Goku stepped forward. Allow me, he said. Wounds made by void-touched weapons resist normal healing. He knelt beside her, respectfully waiting for her permission before touching the injury. When she nodded cautiously, he placed his palm over the wound without quite touching it. Golden energy, warm and surprisingly gentle, flowed from his hand into the cut, knitting flesh together without leaving a scar. There. The void contamination is neutralized as well. Chi-Chi tested the leg, finding it completely healed. Thank you, she said, professional enough to acknowledge help despite her lingering suspicion. Goku stood, surveying the clearing again. This is the fourth breach site. 3 others have appeared in Heaven and Hell respectively. Together, they form part of the seal configuration. Fourth, Chi-Chi frowned. The ancient texts speak of 7 points needed for the complete seal. Correct. We must prevent the remaining 3 breaches. He turned to her, expression serious. Your KN. Knowledge of the Guardian Order could prove invaluable. The mortal realm faces the greatest immediate danger, as it lacks the inherent defenses of heaven and hell. Chi-Chi straightened, instinctively responding to the respect in his tone. The Order has protected boundaries for millennia. I won't abandon that duty now. I'm not asking you to abandon anything. Goku gestured to the unconscious cultists. These are merely foot soldiers. Their master knows exactly what the seal will unleash, the merging of all realms into primordial chaos from which they believe they can forge a new reality. He extended his hand, not commanding, but offering. I propose an alliance, Guardian Chi-Chi. Your knowledge of mortal boundaries combined with my authority over heaven and hell gives us the best chance to prevent catastrophe. Chi-Chi hesitated, years of training cautioning against trusting supernatural beings, no matter how apparently benevolent. Yet something about Goku rang true, a straightforwardness beneath the power and authority. What would this alliance entail? Information exchange, coordinated defense of vulnerable boundary points, and investigation into who orchestrates these breaches. He lowered his hand, respecting her caution. I won't compel your cooperation. The Guardian Order has earned its independence through service. Chi-Chi considered her options. Alone, she had barely managed against 5 cultists. If more breaches were coming, and more powerful enemies with them, she would need allies. The Guardian Temple contains records dating back to the First Convergence War, she said finally. They might hold information about the seal's weaknesses or methods to counter it. Goku nodded. A good starting point. I can provide details on the current breaches in heaven and hell for comparison. Then we have an alliance, Emperor Goku, Chi-Chi declared, finally sheathing the power pole across her back. But understand this, my loyalty is to the mortal realm. If your actions threaten it, our cooperation ends immediately. Instead of offense, Goku's expression showed approval. I would expect nothing less from a true guardian. The balance between realms must be preserved, that is my duty as emperor. Quote, a subtle shift in the air drew both their attentions. Above the clearing, stars were moving, rearranging themselves into unnatural configurations. The aftermath of the breach attempt. Goku explained, frowning. Reality remains thin here. We should relocate to a more stable location before discussing further plans. The Guardian Temple is warded against incursions, Chi-Chi offered. It would be secure for planning purposes. Goku nodded. Lead the way, Guardian. As they collected the unconscious cultists for questioning and prepared to depart. Chi-Chi studied her new ally surreptitiously. Emperor of Heaven and Hell. An impossible claim, yet he wielded power unlike anything recorded in the Guardian archives. For the first time in generations, a Guardian would work directly with a being from beyond the mortal realm. Her ancestors would be scandalized, but Chi-Chi recognized necessity when it stared her in the face. The convergence was coming, and traditional boundaries, both physical and philosophical, might need to be crossed to prevent it. Whis observed the unfolding events from a discreet distance, maintaining a perception bend. Ding field that rendered him virtually invisible to mortal senses. His role as advisor frequently required such observation without interference, allowing Emperor Goku to establish relationships with the impression of being constantly supervised. The Guardian woman intrigued him. Her fighting style combined techniques from several ancient disciplines thought lost to the mortal realm, and her Ki control, while primitive by divine standards, showed remarkable precision for a human. More importantly, she challenged Goku directly despite obvious power disparity. Few in heaven or hell dared such forthright address with the Emperor. Whis tapped his staff lightly against the ground, creating a small distortion through which he could communicate with the Imperial Palace. The face of Beerus, Goku's feline-featured security commander, appeared in the portal. Report, Beerus demanded without preamble. His Majesty has successfully sealed the 4th breach and encountered an unexpected ally. A surviving member of the Guardian Order. Beerus's eyes narrowed. Impossible. We purged their temples ourselves after the last war. Evidently one line survived. Whis smiled slightly. She's quite formidable for a mortal. Formidable mortals have short lifespans when meddling in cosmic affairs, Beerus retorted. Is she a liability? Whis watched as Chi-Chi led Goku along a mountain path. Her posture alert but gradually relaxing from combat readiness. Quite the contrary. Her knowledge of boundary maintenance in the mortal realm could prove invaluable. He noted how Goku matched his pace to the Guardians, consciously moderating his presence to avoid overwhelming the mortal environment around them. An interesting accommodation from someone who could traverse realms with a thought. The courts are in uproar. Beerus informed him. Heaven's representatives demand immediate elevation of the Celestial Guard to war footing. Hell's assembly counters that their forces should lead any military response. Predictable. Whis sighed. Has either side implemented the Emperor's directives? Minimally. They're too busy positioning for advantage if the crisis worsens. Whis shook his head, genuine disappointment evident. Even after centuries under Goku's rule, the fundamental mistrust between realms persisted. Inform both courts that the Emperor has successfully contained the fourth breach and identified its configuration as matching the historical pattern. That should focus their attention. Beerus growled low, and if they continue squabbling, remind them that the Emperor united heaven and hell through combat prowess, not diplomacy. Whis smiled serenely. His patience with bureaucratic obstruction has limits. The communication winked out as Whis returned his attention to Goku and the Guardian. They had reached what appeared to be a sheer cliff face, unremarkable except for a particular configuration of weathered rocks at its base. Chi-Chi placed her palm against the stone, channeling ki in a specific pattern. Reality rippled, revealing an ancient temple complex seamlessly integrated with the mountain itself. Impressive concealment magic, especially for a mortal construction. Whis maintained his distance as they entered. The temple's wards would detect his presence if he approached too closely, and the Emperor would signal if his assistance became necessary. For now, observation remained his primary duty, watching as two protectors from different realms began an alliance that might determine the fate of all existence. The Guardian Temp. Li's central chamber hadn't hosted a visitor from beyond the mortal realm in over 300 years. Chi-Chi felt a strange dissonance watching Emperor Goku, apparently ruler of both afterlife domains, examine the ancient scrolls and artifacts with genuine interest and surprising knowledge. Your order preserved these texts remarkably well, he commented, carefully unrolling a star chart dating from the previous Convergence War. Some of these were thought destroyed during the Purge. Chi-Chi paused in the midst of lighting the chamber's ceremonial lamps. The Purge. Goku glanced up, expression unreadable. After the last Convergence War, certain factions believed the Guardian Order possessed too much dangerous knowledge. Many temples were neutralized. You mean destroyed, Chi-Chi corrected flatly. And their guardians with them. Yes, he didn't attempt to justify or excuse it. It was before my time as Emperor, but that doesn't erase the wrong done to your order. I processed this revelation silently as she completed the lamp lighting ritual. The flames burned with unusual clarity, infused with protective energy that illuminated the chamber while strengthening its wards. The Eastern Temple survived because of its remoteness, she finally said. And because my ancestors developed cloaking techniques specifically designed to hide from otherworldly detection. Goku nodded. Effective techniques. Even I would have difficulty locating this place without being shown the way. He turned his attention back to the chart, fingers tracing constellation patterns. These star configurations match what we're seeing now. The previous convergence attempt used the same celestial alignment. Chi-Chi joined him at the table, professional curiosity temporarily overriding her wariness. The old texts say the seal requires specific astronomical conditions, a 7-point alignment that occurs once every 1,000 years. And we're approaching the millennial peak. Goku's expression grew grim. That's why the breaches are appearing now. The ritual requires both the astral alignment and physical breaches at specific locations. He gestured to the unconscious cultists, whom they had secured in a warded antechamber. These followers likely know only what they were told, promises of power or transcendence. The true architect understands exactly what the convergence would unleash. And what exactly would it unleash? Chi-Chi asked. The texts are vague, speaking of primordial chaos, and unmaking of order, but little concrete detail. Goku was silent for a moment, his expression distant as if seeing something beyond the temple walls. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of personal knowledge. Imagine everything you know, physical laws, time's flow. The separation between thought and matter, dissolving like sugar in water. The barriers between realms exist for essential reasons. Heaven, hell, and the mortal realm operate under different fundamental principles. Converging them doesn't create harmony but mutual annihilation. He looked directly at Chi-Chi, centuries of memory evident in his gaze. I witnessed a partial convergence during the last war. A region where heaven and hell overlapped for merely 7 days. Nothing survived. Not souls, not matter, not even the concept of existence itself. Just a void that hungers for more reality to consume. Chi-Chi suppressed a shiver. And someone is trying to create this deliberately. Yes. The question is who, and why. Goku straightened. Decision made. We need to interrogate our prisoners. They may know more than they realize. Chi-Chi led him to the antechamber where the cultists lay bound by both physical restraints and spiritual wards. The leader was beginning to regain consciousness. Eyelids fluttering beneath his hood. Goku approached, removing the hood with surprising gentleness to reveal a middle-aged man with unremarkable features. He looked entirely ordinary, neither malevolent nor mystically significant. "What's your name?" Goku asked. The man's eyes widened as full awareness returned, darting between Chi-Chi and Goku with growing panic. I am Magister Seraph of the Transcendent Dawn. A cult name, Chi-Chi observed. "What's your real name?" Hesitation. Then, Akio Tanaka. I was an astronomy professor before I was shown the truth. And what truth is that, Akio? Goku's tone remained conversational, non-threatening. That reality is flawed, artificially divided when it should be whole. Despite his bound state, fervor entered Akio's voice. The master showed us ancient texts, proof that all realms were once unified before being selfishly partitioned by entities claiming divine right. Chi-Chi exchanged glances with Goku. Who is this master? We know him only as the architect. He appears differently to each of us, as if his form cannot be fully perceived by mortal senses. Akio's expression turned reverential. He possesses knowledge beyond mortal understanding. He showed us how to identify the junction points where reality could be restored. Goku knelt to eye level with the bound man. Akio, listen carefully. I am the Emperor of Heaven and Hell. I have witnessed what happens when realms converge. It isn't restoration, it's annihilation. Doubt flickered across Akio's features, quickly replaced by defensive certainty. Lies. The existing powers always fear change. The architect told us the so-called Emperor would try to prevent transcendence. He knew I would intervene, Goku said, interest sharpening. What else did he say about me? That you seized control of divided realms to prevent their natural reunification. That you maintain artificial boundaries for your own power. Akio's voice grew bolder. That your time ends when the seal activates. Chi-Chi watched Goku's reaction carefully. His expression revealed nothing, but the temperature in the room dropped several degrees, a subtle manifestation of controlled power. Did your architect explain what happens to all souls, including yours, when the convergence occurs? Goku asked quietly. Before Akio could answer, one of the other cultists convulsed violently. Back arching impossibly as foam flecked his lips. Chi-Chi rushed forward, medical training asserting itself, but halted when the man's eyes snapped open, revealing not human yes but swirling vortices of purple energy. You cannot stop what comes, Emperor. The voice emerged from the cultist's throat but belonged to something else entirely, deep, resonant, and layered. With multiple tones speaking simultaneously. The seal awakens. The convergence approaches. Your reign ends. Goku moved with blinding speed, placing his palm against the possessed cultist's forehead. Golden crimson energy flowed from his hand, fighting against the purple glow that had engulfed the man's body. Who addresses me? Goku demanded, power lending his voice otherworldly resonance. The possessed cultist laughed, a sound like grinding consonants. 1WHO remembers the time before division. 1WHO will unmake your flawed creation. Release this vessel, Goku commanded. Face me directly if you dare. In time, usurper. When the seal completes, the purple energy fought against Goku's restraining power. 7 breaches, 7 sacrifices. Then I return. Kai Si. Hai grabbed a talisman from her pouch, an exorcism seal passed down through guardian generations. She slapped it against the cultist's chest, adding her own key to the spiritual equation. The possessed man screamed, his body arching as competing energies battled for control. The purple light intensified briefly before imploding, sucked back into a pinpoint that vanished with a sound like distant thunder. The cultist collapsed, alive but unconscious. Akio stared in horror, his fervent certainty crumbling visibly. That wasn't the architect, he whispered. The architect is wise, measured. That was the entity your architect serves, Goku said grimly, standing. Possibly without knowing it himself. He turned to Chi-Chi, respect evident in his expression. Quick thinking with the exorcism talisman. Guardian techniques still maintain their potency. Chi-Chi nodded, tucking away the praise to examine later. That presence, it wasn't like any spirit or demon documented in our records. No, it wouldn't be. Goku moved back to the main chamber, gesturing for Chi-Chi to follow. What we're facing predates your order's founding. It may even predate the establishment of the current cosmic order. In the main chamber, he indicated the star chart they'd been examining earlier. These alignments occur every 1,000 years, but full convergence attempts happen much more rarely. The last was 7,000 years ago. The first convergence war, Chi-Chi recognized. When the Guardian Order was established to maintain boundaries. Yes, and before that, Goku hesitated, seemingly weighing how much to reveal. Before that was the original separation of realms. What some traditions call the divine partition. He traced a symbol on the chart, 3 interlocking circles arranged in a vertical pattern. Heaven, mortal realm, hell. Distinct but interconnected domains, each with its own purpose in the cosmic balance. And something wants to undo that separation, Chi-Chi concluded. Return everything to, what? Primordial chaos, or to remake reality according to its own design. Goku's expression darkened. Either way, trillions of souls across all realms would be unmade in the process. Chi-Chi processed this information, connecting it with fragments from ancient Guardian texts. Our oldest records mention a time before division, when reality was unified but unstable. They describe a great sundering that created the 3 realms for the protection of all existence. Goku nodded. Different traditions name it differently, but the essential truth remains consistent across cosmologies. He straightened. Decision made. We need to identify the remaining breach points before they can be activated. With 4 completed, the seal is already gaining power. Reality will grow increasingly unstable around the breach sites. The Guardian records might contain information about probable locations, Chi-Chi offered, moving toward the temple library. Historical patterns from previous attempts could. She stopped mid-sentence as a tremor shook the temple, not a physical earthquake but something more fundamental. The very air seemed to vibrate, colors momentarily shifting toward purple before stabilizing again. Goku's expression turned grave. It's beginning sooner than I expected. The 4th breach has accelerated the process. He looked at Chi-Chi with sudden intensity. Guardian, I must return to the Imperial Palace immediately to coordinate defenses across all realms. Will you continue investigating potential breach sites here in the mortal realm? Chi-Chi straightened, her decision already made when she'd led him to the temple. I will. The Guardian Order has protected boundaries for millennia. I won't fail that duty now. I believe you won't. Something in Goku's tone, genuine respect rather than mere politeness, caught Chi-Chi's attention. He continued, I'll send a communication method that works across realm boundaries. We must coordinate our efforts closely. He reached into seemingly empty air, pulling forth a small crystalline object that glimmered with inner light. This is an Imperial resonator. It allows direct communication regardless of dimensional barriers. He offered it to Chi-Chi, who accepted it cautiously. The crystal felt warm against her palm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Simple. Why focus your thoughts on me while holding it, and I'll hear you, Goku explained. It works in both directions. I can contact you the same way. Convenient, Chi-Chi acknowledged, tucking the crystal into a secure pocket of her battle raiment. But I'll need more than communication to stop cultists from creating breaches. Goku smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his imperial bearing into something more approachable. The Guardian Order maintained boundaries against supernatural threats for thousands of years with far less support than you have now. I've seen your capabilities firsthand. He stepped back, energy beginning to gather around him as he prepared for trans-dimensional travel. Nevertheless, I'll arrange additional resources for your use. The cultists won't expect a prepared guardian. Wait, Chi-Chi said suddenly, professional curiosity overriding protocol. You never explained how one person became emperor of both heaven and hell. The texts describe them as eternally opposed realms. Goku paused, the energy swirling around him stabilizing momentarily. That is a rather long story, he replied, amusement touching his features. Perhaps for another time. I've found that how someone came to power often reveals much about how they wield it, Chi-Chi pressed, surprising herself with her boldness. Goku studied her for a moment, then nodded as if coming to a decision. The short version: I refused to accept that eternal conflict between realms was necessary or beneficial. When I had the power to change that paradigm, I did. The energy around him intensified, reality bending as he prepared to depart. Protect the boundaries, Guardian Chi-Chi. I'll return as soon as possible. With a flash of golden crimson light, he vanished, leaving Chi-Chi Al. One in the ancient temple with unconscious cultists and more questions than answers. She turned to the library, determination setting her features. The Guardian Order had survived the purge, persist. Through centuries of being dismissed as superstition, and maintained their vigil regardless of recognition or support. One Guardian might seem insufficient against a cosmic threat, but Chi-Chi had no intention of failing now that her duty had become critical. She would identify the remaining breach points, prevent further sacrifices, and uphold her oath to protect the mortal realm, even if that meant working alongside an emperor whose very existence challenged everything the Order believed about cosmic balance. As she reached for the oldest texts in the archive, the crystal in her pocket pulsed once with reassuring warmth. For better or worse, she was no longer facing this threat alone. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The Scientific Soul. The Imperial Palace existed simultaneously in heaven and hell, a marvel of cosmic architecture that defied conventional physics. From the celestial perspective, it appeared as a gleaming citadel of crystal and light, soaring spires reaching toward infinity. From the infernal view, it manifested as an imposing fortress of obsidian and crimson energy, both protective and threatening. The truth, as with most matters concerning Emperor Goku's reign, lay somewhere between these perceptions. Goku materialized in the central nexus, a vast circular chamber where the energies of both realms achieved perfect equilibrium. Whis awaited him, staff in hand, expression revealing nothing of the chaos that had erupted during the Emperor's absence. The courts demand immediate audience, Whis reported without preamble. Heaven's celestial conclave claims Hell's forces violated containment protocols at the second breach site. Hell's assembly counters that Heaven's scholars deliberately provided flawed containment sigils. Goku's expression remained impassive, though his tail, always the most honest indicator of his mood, lashed once in irritation. Any actual progress on reinforcing the existing breaches? Minimal, Whis admitted. Lord Zenith has deployed celestial sentinels to monitor the breaches in heaven, while General Pyrrhus established defensive perimeters around Hell's compromised zones. Neither side trusts the other's methods enough to implement a unified strategy. Millennia of progress, and still they bicker like children when faced with common threat. Goku rolled his shoulders, shedding the diplomatic persona he'd maintained with the Guardian. Here, in his own domain, he allowed more of his true nature to surface, the warrior who had conquered both afterlife realms not through political maneuvering but through unmatched combat prowess and an uncompromising vision. Whis watched this transformation with the measured interest of one who had witnessed it countless times. You found something unexpected in the mortal realm. It wasn't a question. Whis's perceptive abilities extended far beyond ordinary senses. A guardian, Goku confirmed. The Order survived, at least in one lineage. She's formidable, maintained their techniques and knowledge with remarkable fidelity. Whis noted, the faintest hint of amusement touching his features. And her name, Chi-Chi. Goku crossed to the dimensional viewing pool that dominated the chamber's center. She's investigating potential breach sites in the mortal realm. I've provided an Imperial resonator for communication. A significant gesture of trust for someone you've just met. Whis tapped his staff once against the floor, summoning data streams that swirled around them in luminous patterns. The resonator gives her direct access to you, regardless of dimensional barriers. The situation demands extraordinary measures. Goku waved a hand through the data streams, focusing them on the known breach points. 4 active, 3 potential. The seal pattern is unmistakable. Whis studied the pattern with ancient eyes that had witnessed countless cosmic cycles. The traditional convergence configuration, yes. But notice the energy signatures, they don't match historical records precisely. Goku narrowed his eyes, examining the subtle differences Whis had identified. Stronger void resonance. The breaches aren't just connecting realms, they're drawing power from the void between. Precisely. Whis's normally placid expression turned grave. Someone has modified the ancient ritual. They're not merely seeking to converge the three primary realms, but to introduce void elements into the equation, accelerating the collapse. Goku's voice hardened, summoning a specific entity from the void rather than causing general convergence. It appears so. Whis gestured at one particular data stream. The energy signature contains embedded patterns consistent with binding rituals, as if preparing to anchor something to our reality. Goku straightened, decision made. Summon the quartz. Both simultaneously. They'll protest sharing. I don't care. Power briefly flared around Goku's form, golden light interlaced with crimson shadows. His crisis transcends their petty rivalries. Any representative who cannot set aside realm prejudice will be removed from their position permanently. Whis bowed slightly, a smile touching his lips. As you command, Your Majesty. Shall I also prepare the war chamber? Yes. And contact Beerus. I want the Cosmic Guard on high alert. If our mysterious architect makes another move, I want to know immediately. As Whis departed to implement these directives, Goku remained at the viewing pool, manipulating the data streams with practiced gestures. The fourth breach point, the one he'd sealed in Mortal Realm, continued emitting trace void energies despite his intervention. Not enough to maintain a full breach, but sufficient to suggest deteriorating boundary integrity. His mind returned briefly to the Guardian, Chi-Chi. Her combat skills impressed him, not merely technique, but adaptability and courage against supernatural threats. The Guardian Order had always produced exceptional mortals, which explained why certain factions had insisted on their elimination after the last Convergence War. Goku regretted that purge, though it had occurred before his ascension to Emperor. Too much knowledge lost, too many skilled boundary keepers eliminated for political expediency. Perhaps if the Order had remained intact, the current crisis might have been detected earlier. A soft chime erupted his reflections, the Imperial Resonator activating. He focused, opening the connection. Chi-Chi's voice materialized in his mind, clear despite the vast dimensional distance. Emperor Goku, they identified a pattern in the Guardian records that may indicate the next breach location. Go ahead. He directed the data streams to incorporate this new information. Historical accounts from previous convergence attempt show 7 sacred sites used for the ritual. 4 have remained consistent across all recorded attempts, including Mount Paozu, where we met. The remaining 3 varied, pending on astronomical alignments during the attempt period. Goku nodded, impressed by her efficiency. Can you predict the current variables? Partially. Her voice carried the focused intensity of a trained strategist. Based on current celestial positions, I've narrowed potential sites to 3 locations in the mortal realm: the ancient forest of Diablo, the crystalline caverns beneath North City, and the abandoned shrine at Yunzabit Heights. Excellent work. Goku manipulated the viewing pool, highlighting these locations. I'll dispatch resources to monitor all 3. If cultist activity appears at any site, I'll handle it. Chi-Chi interrupted, determination evident. This is Guardian territory. Goku smiled despite himself. Few beings in any realm spoke to him with such direct authority. I don't doubt your capabilities, Guardian. But even you can't be in 3 locations simultaneously. A brief pause suggested she recognized the logic but remained reluctant to concede. What resources do you intend to deploy to my realm, Emperor? Nothing that would disrupt the balance, he assured her. Observation only, unless intervention becomes necessary. Another pause, then, very well. But I expect to be notified immediately of any findings. Of course. He hesitated, then added, there's another matter. The energy signatures from the breaches suggest modification to the traditional convergence ritual. The architect appears to be summoning a specific entity from the void between realms. Chi-Chi's sharp intake of breath carried clearly through the connection. That changes everything. Guardian texts contain warnings about void entities. They're antithetical to structured reality itself. Precisely why we need specialized expertise. Goku made a decision. There's someone you should meet, a scientist whose understanding of dimensional energies exceeds anyone in the three realms. Her insights could be crucial for countering this threat. Another immortal. Chi-Chi's tone carried caution. Not exactly. She exists in a state between life and death, a consciousness preserved in an android form of her own design. Her name is Android 21, and she operates a research facility in a dimensional pocket near the mortal realm. And you trust this, android? Goku considered his answer carefully. I trust her expertise and her fundamental desire for knowledge. Her methods can be unconventional, but in this situation, conventional approaches will prove insufficient. How do I find her? You don't. Goku gestured, sending a pulse of energy through the resonator. I've just transmitted coordinates to your temple's scrying basin. I'll arrange a meeting at that location in 6 hours, enough time for you to review relevant Guardian records and for me to conclude business here. I'll be there. The connection faded as Chi-Chi broke contact. Goku turned as Whis reappeared, accompanied by Beerus. The feline security commander's perpetual scowl had deepened, whiskers twitching with barely suppressed irritation. The courts are assembled, Your Majesty, Whis reported. Both sides protest the joint session most vigorously. Let them protest. Goku straightened, imperial authority settling around him like a mantle. Beerus, report. Surveillance has detected unusual energy fluctuations at multiple locations throughout all three realms, Beerus stated. Cutting directly to essential information as always. Not full breaches, but potential weakening of dimensional barriers. I've deployed detection units accordingly. Good. LSO establish monitoring at these three locations in the mortal realm. Goku transferred the information Chi-Chi had provided. Priority surveillance, but no intervention without direct authorization. Beerus examined the data, ears flattening slightly. These areas have thin dimensional boundaries naturally. Ideal for breach creation. Exactly why they need watching. Goku turned toward the grand doors that led to the court chamber. One more thing. I need to arrange a meeting with Android 21. Beerus hissed softly. The mad scientist. Is that wise, given her appetites? Her condition is stabilized, Goku replied firmly. And her knowledge of dimensional physics is unparalleled. We need her insights. As you wish. Beerus bowed, clearly disagreeing but unwilling to challenge his emperor directly. I'll establish the secure communication channel. As Beerus departed, Whis fell into step beside Goku, heading toward the court chamber. Android 21 has been particularly reclusive lately. Rumors suggest she's working on something significant. All the more reason to bring her into this investigation, Goku replied. Whatever she's discovered may relate to our current crisis. They paused before the massive doors, one side gleaming celestial gold, the other deepest infernal obsidian. Perfect balance, as with all aspects of Goku's reign. They won't cooperate willingly, Whis observed quietly. Not without demonstration. Goku nodded once, decision made. Then I'll remind them why I rule both realms. The doors swung open, revealing the assembled courts in all their contentious glory. Chaos erupted at the Emperor's appearance. Accusations flying between representatives, demands for exclusive audience, protests about protocol violations. Goku observed the Dizard, for precisely 3 seconds before acting. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Power exploded outward from his form, controlled but overwhelming. Golden divine energy and crimson infernal force balanced in perfect harmony, filling the chamber with presence that commanded absolute attention. The courts fell silent immediately, representatives physically pressed back into their seats. Why the sheer weight of imperial authority? I did not unite heaven and hell through speeches, Goku stated into the silence, but through demonstration of undeniable truth. Divided, we fail, united, we prevail. He ascended to the central dais, power still radiating from his form. The convergence thread approaches. You waste precious time with petty rivalry while reality itself hangs in the balance. Lord Zenith of Heaven's court rose shakily to his feet. Your Majesty, Heaven's resources are fully committed to. Lies, interrupted General Pyrrhus from Hell's assembly. Your scholars prov. IDED containment sigils that amplified the breaches rather than sealing them. Because your brutes implemented them incorrectly. Zenith countered, celestial light flaring around his form. Enough. Goku didn't shout, but power punctuated his command, resonating through the chamber like a physical force. Both representatives immediately sat down. You were commanded to cooperate, Goku continued, voice dangerously calm. Instead, you perpetuate the very divisions our enemy exploits. This ends now. He gestured, and the viewing pool from the central nexus materialized in the chamber's center, displaying the breach data for all to see. 4 active breaches, 3 pending. The seal of convergence forms, but with crucial modifications. He highlighted the void energy signatures. Our opponent seeks not merely to converge realms but to summon an entity from the void between. Murmurs of genuine concern replaced petty bickering. Even the most contentious representatives recognized the existential threat this represented. Effective immediately, I am establishing a unified response council consisting of 3 representatives from each realm. Goku's tone made clear this was not a suggestion. They will operate from the war chamber with full authority to implement cross-realm defenses. All other representatives will return to their respective domains to prepare local containment measures. He surveyed the assembly, meeting eyes from both courts. Anyone, from either realm, who obstructs unified action will be removed from their position and confined until the crisis passes. There will be no exceptions, regardless of rank or history. Silence greeted this pronouncement. Goku allowed it to stretch, letting the reality of the situation sink in. You have 1 hour to select your representatives for the council. Choose wisely. Select those who value existence over tradition. He descended from the dais. Dismissed. The courts dispersed quickly, representatives hurrying to convene selection discussions. Whis materialized beside Goku as the chamber emptied. Effective, the advisor observed. Though certain factions will resent the directive, resentment is preferable to extinction. Goku turned toward a side passage. Establish the war chamber for the council. I have another matter to attend to. Android 21, Whis surmised. Beerus has prepared the communication array in your private study. Goku nodded, striding toward the indicated location. His private study contrasted sharply with the Imperial Chamber's grandeur, a simple space with practical furnishings. Fighting manuals alongside governance texts, and large windows overlooking both celestial and infernal landscapes simultaneously. The communication array hummed softly in one corner, a sophist, arcaded construction of crystal and energy capable of reaching across dimensional boundaries. Goku activated it with a precise energy pulse, attuning the frequency to Android 21's unique signature. The array shimmered, coalesced, then projected a 3-dimensional image of a laboratory unlike any found in conventional realms. Equipment of impossible configuration lined walls that seemed to extend into infinity. At the center stood a female figure, tall, elegantly proportioned, with magenta hair and eyes that held intelligence sharp enough to cut. Emperor Goku, Android 21 acknowledged, adjusting glasses she didn't physically need but maintained as part of her self-image. This is unexpected. My research is at a critical phase. Your research intersects with an urgent matter of cosmic security, Goku replied, noting subtle changes in her appearance since their last interaction. Her energy signature fluctuated slightly, indications of the ongoing battle between her various integrated components. Her eyes narrowed, analytical mind already processing implications. The dimensional anomalies have been recording. They're not natural phenomena, are they? No. Someone is deliberately creating breaches between realms. Following the seal of convergence pattern. Android 21's expression sharpened with genuine interest. Fascinating. Misguided and potentially catastrophic, but fascinating nonetheless. She tapped elegant fingers against a nearby console. I've detected unusual void energy infiltration at several boundary points. Initially, I attributed it to natural boundary decay. But the pattern suggested deliberate application. We need your expertise, Goku stated directly. Both your scientific knowledge and your unique perspective as a being who exists between states. A subtle smile curved her lips. How diplomatic, Emperor. You mean my hybrid nature. Part human consciousness, part cellular construct, part absorbed essence from multiple realms. Your condition gives you insights others lack, Goku affirmed, particularly regarding dimensional barriers and their manipulation. Android 21 turned away briefly, manipulating holographic displays that appeared and disappeared with her gestures. I assume time is critical. The energy pattern suggests accelerating degradation. Correct. I've already sealed one breach in the mortal realm, but 4 more approach activation potential. She paused, surprise briefly visible before her analytical demeanor reasserted itself. You personally sealed a breach. Interesting. The energy requirements would be substantial. I had assistance from a guardian. This truly captured her attention. She turned fully toward the projection, eyes wide with academic excitement. A guardian. The order still exists. There be. Boundary manipulation techniques were theoretically fascinating, combining mortal ki with dimensional anchoring in ways that shouldn't work according to conventional physics. One lineage survived, Goku confirmed. I propose a meeting, you, myself, and the guardian, to combine our knowledge and develop a strategy against the breach creation. Android 21 considered, head tilting slightly in a gestu. That emphasized her not quite human nature. Your proposal has merit. My current research has reached a stage where I can briefly relocate. Her eyes narrowed. However, I require assurances regarding my special dietary needs. Goku nodded, understanding the delicate matter. Android 21's unique physiology required regular energy absorption to maintain stability between her various components. Without proper feeding, her more predatory aspects could emerge unpredictably. Arrangements will be made, he promised. Stabilization resources sufficient for an extended operation. Then I accept. She straightened, professionalism masking the hunger that briefly flashed in her eyes. Transmit coordinates and timeframe. Goku sent the information through the communication array. 6 hours. Neutral territory near the mortal realm. Bring whatever equipment you deem necessary for dimensional analysis. I'll be prepared. She hesitated, then added with surprising candidness, it will be interesting to meet a guardian. Their order fascinated me even when I was fully human. The projection faded as she terminated the connection. Goku remained still for a moment, considering the complexity of what he'd set in motion. Android 21 represented a calculated risk. Her brilliance was unmatched, but her stability remained questionable despite her best efforts at control. Whis materialized silently beside him. An alliance between a guardian and Android 21. Unprecedented. The situation demands unconventional approaches. Goku turned from the communication array. Has the council been selected? Yes, with surprising efficiency. Both courts recognized the severity once they reviewed the complete data. Whis produced a small crystal containing the council roster. Relatively moderate representatives from both sides. They await your final approval before beginning operations. Goku scanned the names, noting the political balance achieved. Not ideal, but workable. Approved. Brief them on current intelligence and ensure they understand their authority extends across realm boundaries for this crisis only. And your plans regarding the mortal realm meeting? I'll depart shortly to prepare the site. Goku moved toward the armory adjoining his study. If the architect is monitoring dimensional disturbances, this meeting will likely attract attention. A calculated risk, Whis observed. Or an opportunity to draw out our opponent. Goku selected several specialized items from the armory, defensive talismans, detection devices, and a small crystal vial containing golden liquid. Have Beerus deploy a cosmic guard unit near the location, cloaked from conventional detection. Already arranged, Whis confirmed with a slight smile. The commander anticipated your strategy. Goku nodded in approval. Despite his perpetual irritability, Beerus remained one of his most valuable commanders precisely because he thought several moves ahead. One last matter requires your attention before departure. Whis added. The Soul Assessment Chamber has identified an anomalous energy pattern among recently arrived mortal souls. Similar void contamination to the breach sites, but integrated into the soul essence itself. Goku frowned. Deliberate infection rather than environmental exposure. Precisely. The contaminated souls originated from locations near potential breach points in the mortal realm. Quote, reconnaissance through death, Goku concluded. Our opponent sacrifices followers, then extracts information when their souls transition between realms. Quote, an effective strategy for bypassing traditional boundary monitoring, Whis acknowledged. Particularly with Guardian presence reduced to a single lineage. Increase security protocols for all incoming souls, Goku directed. Full quarantine for any showing void contamination, but treat them as victims rather than willing accomplices until proven otherwise. As you command. Whis bowed slightly. The Imperial vestments for your departure. Goku shook his head. No, this meeting requires a different approach. He concentrated briefly, his elaborate Imperial attire dissolving into something simpler. A fighting GI of midnight blue with Imperial crimson accents, sturdy boots, and armored bracers bearing subtle insignia of both realms. Better to meet a scientist and a warrior as a fellow combatant rather than as emperor. He explained, securing the selected items from the armory. This alliance will function through mutual respect, not hierarchical authority. Whis' expression revealed nothing, but the slight tilt of his head suggested approval. A surprisingly diplomatic approach from someone who just demonstrated imperial power to the combined courts. Different situations require different methods. Goku moved toward the personal transportation dais in the corner of his study. Monitor council progress and alert me to any significant developments. Of course, Your Majesty. Whis stepped back as Goku ascended the dais. And if the courts resume their bickering in your absence? Goku's smile held no humor. Remind them that I can return instantly from anywhere in existence. And that my patience has limits. Energy gathered around him. Controlled power that bent reality without breaking it. Unlike crude teleportation, Imperial transit allowed precise navigation between dimensional layers. Following paths that existed beyond conventional space-time. In a flash of golden crimson light, Emperor Goku vanished, leaving Whis to manage the increasingly complex political situation among the unified courts. Chi-Chi closed the ancient text with careful reverence, her mind cataloging crucial information while dismissing metaphorical obfuscation common in Guardian writings. 3 hours of intensive research had yielded valuable insights regarding the Seal of Convergence, but troubling questions remained. She moved to the scrying basin, reviewing the coordinates Goku had transmitted. The location, a remote plateau in a dimensional fold between realms, seemed designed specifically for beings from different domains to meet without disrupting natural boundaries. Tactical considerations occupied her thoughts as she prepared for departure. This Android 21 represented an unknown variable, neither fully alive nor dead, neither mortal nor immortal. Guardian Train. Ing emphasized caution when dealing with entities that defied fundamental categorization. Yet Emperor Goku trusted this being enough to include her in their alliance. That carried weight, despite Chi's ingrained skepticism regarding otherworldly entities. She changed from her traditional training clothes into the battle raiment, its material responding to her movements with subtle reinforcement. The power pole secured across her back, she added specialized equipment from the Guardian arsenal, boundary restoration talismans, void-repelling incense, and detection charms tuned to dimensional disturbances. A final item gave her pause, a small jade amulet passed down through generations of her family line. Legend claimed it contained a fragment of the original boundary established between realms. Whether true or metaphorical, the amulet had proven effective in previous Guardian operations. She secured it around her neck, tucking it beneath the raiment's collar. Better to have all available resources when meeting unknown entities. The temple's main chamber still contained the unconscious cultists, secured in a warded cell that prevented both escape and outside interference. I checked their condition, stable but unresponsive, the possession incident having left lingering trauma. She refreshed the medical wards before departing, ensuring they would remain unconscious but healthy until proper interrogation could resume. Outside, twilight painted Mount Paozu in deepening shades of purple and indigo. Chi-Chi activated the temple's defensive protocols, ancient mechanisms that would make the structure virtually undetectable to both mortal and supernatural senses in her absence. The journey to the meeting coordinates required specialized transportation. Chi-Chi removed a small carved box from a concealed alcove near the temple entrance. Inside rested the Kintoan seed, a golden sphere the size of a marble that gleamed within her light. She tossed it upward, channeling G-specific key through her palm as she spoke the activation phrase, Kintoan, arise and serve the Guardian's need. The sphere expanded rapidly, transforming into a small golden cloud that hovered at mounting height. An artifact from the early days of the Guardian Order, the Kintoan could traverse dimensional boundaries when properly directed. Chi-Chi leapt atop the cloud, which solidified beneath her feet while remaining visibly vaporous. To the coordinates provided, she commanded, visualizing the location from the scrying basin. The Kintoon rose smoothly into the darkening sky, Axel, rating beyond mortal perception as it followed paths between conventional space. Chi-Chi maintained perfect balance despite the incredible speed, her senses extending beyond physical limitations to navigate the subtle currents between dimensions. The journey took precisely 17 minutes, crossing distances that would require hours by conventional travel. The Kintoon slowed as they approached the destination, a plateau suspended in a pocket dimension where reality folded back upon itself. Chi-Chi surveyed the location from above, tactical assessment automatic after years of training. The plateau appeared naturally formed but contained subtle modifications, smoother surfaces than erosion alone would create, precisely placed boulders forming a perimeter that could serve as either boundary markers or defensive positions if needed. At the center stood a simple structure, open-sided pavilion with a roof of interlocking wooden beams that formed complex geometric patterns. Not merely decorative, Chi-Chi realized upon closer inspection, but a dimensional stabilization array disguised as architecture. She directed the Kintoon to descend near the pavilion rather than directly into it, maintaining tactical advantage by controlling her approach. As the cloud lowered to ground level, she noted fresh energy signatures indicating recent arrival. Emperor Goku awaited within the pavilion, his attire significantly different from their previous encounter. Gone were the elaborate imperial vestments, replaced by functional fighting attire that emphasized his warrior nature rather than his royal status. The change registered as significant to Chi-Chi, a deliberate choice that suggested different terms for their continued alliance. She dismissed the Kintoon with a gesture, the Cloud pressing back into seed form and returning to her palm. Pocketing the artifact, she approached the pavilion with measured steps, senses alert for any indication of threat or deception. Guardian, Goku acknowledged her arrival, his posture relaxed but alert, a fellow warrior rather than an imperial authority. Thank you for coming. I serve the boundaries between realms, Chi-Chi replied simply, entering the pavilion with careful awareness of sight lines and exit routes, habits ingrained through Guardian training. Has your scientific ally arrived? Not yet, though her approach vector is detectable. Goku gestured toward the eastern edge of the plateau, where subtle distortion suggested imminent dimensional transit. Android 21 travels via specialized methods adjusted to her unique physiology. Chi-Chi took position at the pavilion's western side, maintaining clear space between herself and Goku, not from fear but from tactical prudence. You mentioned she exists between life and death. Explain. Goku considered his response carefully. Android 21 began as a brilliant human scientist specializing in dimensional physics and biotechnology. When facing terminal illness, she transferred her consciousness into an artificial body of her own design. However, the process proved complicated. Complicated how? Chi-Chi pressed, sensing important details beneath the diplomatic phrasing. The transfer succeeded, but her new form incorporated cellular material from multiple sources, including non-human entities. These components retained certain appetites that her consciousness must constantly regulate. Chi-Chi's eyes narrowed. She's dangerous. Potentially, Goku acknowledged without hesitation. But her knowledge of dimensional boundaries and void energy is unparalleled across all realms. In this crisis, her expertise outweighs the risk. Before Chi-Chi could respond, the dimensional distortion at the plateau's edge intensified. Reality folded inward, creating a spiraling portal through which stepped a female figure of striking appearance. Android 21 stood nearly as tall as Goku, her form simultaneously feminine and otherworldly. Magenta hair framed Faye. A tears too perfect to be naturally human, while eyes of the same unusual color held intelligence sharp enough to dissect reality itself. Her attire, a modified laboratory coat over form-fitting black garments, managed to appear both scientific and predatory. Most telling was her energy signature, a complex layering of human consciousness, artificial components, and something else that resonated uncomfortably against Chi-Chi's guardian senses. Power contained but not entirely tamed. The android scientist approached with graceful precision, carrying a small case that hummed with technological energy. Her gaze assessed the pavilion, the surrounding plateau, and finally the two individuals awaiting her. Emperor Goku, she acknowledged with a slight nod, then turned her full attention to Chi-Chi. And you must be the guardian. Fascinating. Your energy signature contains harmonic resonances consistent with boundary manipulation techniques thought lost centuries ago. Her directness caught Chi-Chi momentarily off guard. No social pleasantries, no diplomatic circumlocution, just immediate scientific observation. It felt refreshingly honest after the political complexities of dealing with an otherworldly emperor. I am Chi-Chi, 43rd Guardian of the Eastern Boundary, she replied, matching the direct approach. My techniques remain effective against interdimensional threats. Evidently, Android 21 placed her case on the central table within the pavilion. Otherwise, the fourth breach would have fully activated rather than merely initiating. She glanced at Goku. Your intervention was also substantial. The energy pattern showed Imperial class power application balanced with traditional Guardian technique. An effective combination. She opened her case, revealing P meant unlike anything Chi-Chi had encountered. Crystalline components merged with biological elements in configurations that defied conventional engineering principles. I've brought analysis equipment, calibrated to detect void energy infiltration patterns. With proper baseline measurements, we can potentially predict the next breach location with 87% accuracy. Chi-Chi found herself simultaneously impressed by the scientist's competence and unsettled by her clinical demeanor. You speak of void energy infiltration. The Guardian texts describe void as absolute nothingness, the antithesis of structured reality. How can nothing infiltrate something? Android 21's eyes lit with academic enthusiasm. An excellent question that highlights terminological imprecision in traditional texts. Void, in this context, isn't true nothingness but rather a dimensional state outside conventional reality parameters, a domain with different fundamental laws. She activated a device from her case, projecting a three-dimensional model of interlocking spheres representing different realms. Heaven, hell, and the mortal realm exist as structured domains with specific physical laws and energy patterns. Void between, exists as potentiality rather than actuality, a state of existence where reality remains unformed and mutable. Goku nodded, which makes it both dangerous and attractive to certain entities. In unstructured space, those with sufficient will can reshape reality according to their desires. Precisely. Android 21 expanded the projection, highlighting boundaries between spheres. These boundaries don't merely separate realms, they protect reality's fundamental integrity. Breach them incorrectly, and void energy, essentially unformed reality potential, leaks through. Sustained exposure corrupts structured matter, eventually rendering it mutable and ultimately dissolving ordered existence entirely. Chi-Chi processed this information against Guardian knowledge. The ancient texts describe the convergence as unmaking what was divided for preservation. This void corruption is the mechanism. Yes, though your ancestors lacked precise terminology for the process. Android D21 adjusted her glasses with a gesture that struck Chi-Chi as surprisingly human despite her artificial nature. The brilliance of the Guardian Order was achieving practical application without complete theoretical understanding. Your boundary maintenance techniques function precisely because they reinforce reality's structural integrity against void corruption. The scientist's genuine respect for Guardian methods registered as significant to Chi-Chi. Perhaps this alliance held more potential than she'd initially assessed. Goku moved to the center of the pavilion. Theory provides context, but our immediate concern is practical application. Android 21, what can your analysis tell us about the modified convergence ritual our opponent is implementing? Android 21 reconfigured her projection, highlighting energy patterns around known breach points. The traditional seal uses 7 equidistant breach points to create a perfect dimensional fracture pattern. However, these breaches show harmonic variations consistent with targeted summoning rather than general convergence. She manipulated the display, zooming to molecular level at one breach edge. See these energy filaments. You're forming a specific configuration, essentially creating a pathway for something specific rather than a general collapse of boundaries. A summoning ritual disguised as convergence, Goku concluded, expression darkening. The architect isn't trying to merge realms but to bring something through from the void. Chi-Chi stepped closer to the projection, Guardian senses detecting patterns her eyes alone couldn't perceive. These energy signatures match what I felt when the cultist became possessed. Something ancient, predating the division of realms. My analysis supports that assessment. Android 21 highlighted particular energy nodes within the pattern. These configurations contain temporal markers inconsistent with our current cosmic cycle. Whatever entity they're summoning existed before the established order, likely something banished during the original separation of realms. The architect called it restoration, Chi-Chi recalled from the cultist interrogation. He's Kanva, inked himself. He's fixing something broken rather than unleashing catastrophe. A common self-justification among those pursuing destructive goals, Android 21 observed dispassionately. Cognitive dissonance allows rationalization of actions that objectively threaten one's own existence. Goku studied the projection with narrowed eyes. Can your equipment identify the entity being summoned? Potentially, with sufficient data. Android 21 reconfigured her devices. I need energy samples from all breach points for comprehensive analysis. I already possess readings from Hell's breaches through remote sensing. But direct samples from Heaven and the mortal realm would complete the pattern recognition. I've sealed the mortal realm breach, Goku reminded her. Not completely. Android 21's tone held no accusation. Merely scientific observation. Your intervention prevented full activation but left residual connections. Dimensional scars, essentially, still leaking trace void energies. Those traces contain encoded information about what's being summoned. Chi-Chi considered the implications. You're saying we need to revisit the Mount Paozu breach site to collect these energy traces? Precisely. And quickly. The traces decay rapidly once the primary breach is sealed. Android 21 began repacking specific equipment. I estimate we have approximately 12 hours before the signature degrades beyond useful analysis. Quote. Goku's expression turned thoughtful. The site remains under Cosmic Guard surveillance. Returning risks alerting our opponent to our cooperation. A necessary risk, Android 21 countered. Without identifying the specific entity being summoned, we cannot develop targeted countermeasures. Generic boundary reinforcement will prove insufficient against a focused incursion. Chi-Chi found herself agreeing with the scientist's assessment, despite lingering caution regarding her nature. The Guardian Temple contains equipment that could assist with energy collection. Artifacts specifically designed to harvest and contain interdimensional residue. Excellent, Android 21 responded, genuine interest evident. Guardian technology developed through practical application rather than theoretical models. Potentially complementary to my analytical approach. Goku nodded decisively. Then our course is clear. We'll proceed to the Mount Paozu breach site, collect the energy samples. Then analyze them at the Guardian Temple where boundary protections provide additional security. He turned to Android 21. Can your equipment be transported safely to the temple? Yes, though certain components require specialized handling to prevent contamination. She secured her case with practiced efficiency. I've designed everything for field deployment spec. Ethically because laboratory conditions rarely exist at interdimensional event locations. Chi-Chi found herself reassessing the android scientist. Despite her clinical demeanor and unsettling energy signature, Android 21 displayed pragmatic adaptability essential for field operations. Perhaps Goku's trust wasn't misplaced after all. I can transport us directly to the breach site, Goku offered. Though such transit leaves distinctive energy signatures that could be detected. The Kintoon offers more subtle transportation, Chi-Chi countered. It follows natural dimensional currents rather than creating artificial pathways. Less detectable, though slightly slower. Android 21 tilted her head, considering. The Guardian transport method would provide valuable data on natural boundary conditions during transit. I vote for the less detectable option, despite efficiency reduction. Agreed, Goku decided. Subtle approach gives tactical advantage in this situation. Chi-Chi retrieved the Kintoon seed from her pocket, activating it with the same key-infused command as before. The golden cloud expanded to 3 times its previous size, accommodating multiple passengers. Fascinating, Android 21 murmured. Scanner already analyzing the artifact. Solidified dimensional current manipulated through specialized key application. The engineering principles are elegantly intuitive. Chi-Chi mounted the cloud first, establishing control connection through her guardian key. It responds only to those with specific energy harmonics. You'll need to maintain physical contact with me during transit. Goku placed a hand lightly on her shoulder while Android 21 hesitated momentarily before doing the same. The contact sent an unusual sensation through Chi-Chi's arm, not unpleasant but distinctly non-human. As if the android's artificial cells communicated directly with her own biology. Kintoon, to Mount Paozu breach site, Chi-Chi commanded. Stealth approach pattern. The cloud rose smoothly, then accelerated into a dimension-crossing trajectory that followed natural boundary currents rather than cutting directly through reality. The surrounding environment blurred then shifted. Colors beyond normal visual spectrum briefly visible as they traversed the subtle spaces between conventional dimensions. Android 21 maintained perfect balance despite the unusual mode of transportation. Her free hand operating a scanner that collected data throughout the journey. Remarkable efficiency in energy utilization, she commented. The cloud navigates natural dimensional weak points rather than forcing transit paths. Chi-Chi felt unexpected pride at the scientist's appreciation for Guardian methods. Traditional approaches often develop efficiencies that theoretical models miss. The Kintoon has served Guardians for millennia. Integration of traditional and advanced approaches offers optimal results, Android 21 observed. Your Guardian techniques combined with my analytical methods and the Emperor's power presents a formidable combination. Goku remained silent during this exchange, but Chi-Chi sensed his approval of their developing cooperation. His hand on her shoulder maintained perfectly calibrated pressure, enough for secure contact without imposing his considerable strength. The journey lasted approximately 20 minutes before the Kintoon slowed, approaching Mount Paozu from an oblique angle that utilized natural terrain for concealment. Chi-Chi directed the cloud to settle in a small clearing half a kilometer from the breach site, allowing them to approach on foot for better tactical assessment. As they dismounted, Goku gestured subtly toward the surrounding forest. Cosmic Guard units maintained surveillance perimeter. 4 operatives, cloaked from conventional detection. Your people, Chi-Chi confirmed, hand instinctively moving toward the power pole secured across her back. Yes, they won't interfere unless direct threat emerges. He focused briefly, then nodded. They've acknowledged our presence without breaking cover. Android 21 had already activated several devices from her case, their soft humming creating an unusual harmonic pattern. Void energy detected, faint but persistent. The breach left significant scarring in the dimensional fabric. She moved toward the forest path leading to the ritual site, Instrum. NTS extended before her like divining rods. Chi-Chi and Goku followed, maintaining vigilant awareness of their surroundings. Though the cultists had been captured, their mysterious architect might have deployed additional assets after the failed attempt. The clearing where the ritual had occurred appeared unchanged physically, but Chi-Chi's guardian senses detected lingering wrongness. Reality itself remained thin here. Like fabric stretched nearly to tearing. The stone configuration created by the cultists had been dismantled, presumably by Goku's Cosmic Guard during their surveillance. OID-21 moved directly to the breach's central location, devices extended into seemingly empty air. Fascinating. The seal implementation was crude but surprisingly effective. Whoever designed the Ritu Al understood fundamental void mechanics despite lacking finesse in application. She knelt, removing specialized collection containers from her case. I need approximately 7 minutes to gather sufficient energy samples. The residue has already begun degrading, but core signature components remain intact. Chi-Chi circled the perimeter, activating detection talismans at cardinal points around the clearing. Guardian protocol for contaminated sites. These will alert us if void energy suddenly intensifies or changes pattern. Goku positioned himself at the clearing's edge, senses extended beyond normal perception ranges. Something feels wrong, he said quietly. The void residue shouldn't maintain this level of coherence after sealing. Android 21 paused her collection, rechecking instrument readings. You're correct. The decay rate is significantly slower than theoretical models predict. The breach is sealed but not disconnected. Meaning? Chi-Chi asked, hand moving to the power pole. Meaning the connection was established more thoroughly than surface ritual components suggest. Android 21 adjusted her instruments, focusing on deeper dimensional layers. The cultists weren't merely opening a temporary pathway, they were establishing a permanent anchor point. Goku moved to the center of the clearing, kneeling to place his palm against the ground. Golden crimson energy spread outward from his hand, illuminating patterns invisible to normal perception. They modified the Earth itself, he said grimly. Embedded void-receptive materials throughout the surrounding area. Chi-Chi recognized the implications immediately. They're creating a breach that can be reopened repeatedly without performing the full ritual each time. Precisely. Android 21 collected samples with increased urgency. And each reopening would require less energy than the initial breach, eventually reaching a point where the boundary would remain permanently compromised. Can it be neutralized? Goku asked, already channeling energy into the ground to contain the contamination. Theoretically, yes. Android 21's fingers moved with blurring speed across her instruments. The NT emanation must be extracted rather than merely sealed. Void-receptive materials cannot be neutralized by conventional energies, they must be physically removed or transmuted. Chi-Chi reached into her equipment pouch, retrieving a small container of crystalline powder. Guardian archives describe similar contamination during previous convergence attempts. This purification compound was developed specifically for material extraction. Android 21 paused her work, genuine surprise registering. May I? She extended a hand toward the container. Chi-Chi hesitated briefly before providing a small sample. The scientist analyzed it with obvious fascination. Remarkable. The crystalline structure creates a resonance pattern that disrupts void energy bonding at the molecular level. Essentially forking contaminated material to reject the void component. My ancestors developed it through trial and error, Chi-Chi explained, feeling unexpected pride in her order's achievements. The formula has been refined through generations of practical application. An elegant solution developed without modern analytical equipment. Android 21 returned the sample with newfound respect. Sometimes practical wisdom surpasses theoretical models. This acknowledgement from the brilliant scientist felt significant to Chi-Chi, recognition that Guardian methods warranted respect despite their traditional nature. We should implement the purification immediately, Goku decided, maintaining his energy containment around the contaminated area. The longer void-receptive material remains, the deeper the contamination spreads. Chi-Chi nodded, removing the full container of purification compound. The application requires specific key harmonics to activate the crystalline resonance. All need to. She stopped mid-sentence as all three detection talismans flared simultaneously, brilliant red warning that signaled immediate threat. Something's coming, she warned, dropping into defensive stance with practiced fluidity. Goku rose in one smooth motion, power gathering around his form without obvious effort. Void manifestation, substantial power signature approaching rapidly. Android 21 cured her collected samples and activated a defensive field around her equipment. Entity classification uncertain. Energy pattern suggests non-corporeal manifestation utilizing void currents for locomotion. The air above the clearing distorted, colors inverting as reality itself protested the approaching intrusion. A vertical line appeared, not a full breach but a controlled incision in dimensional fabric. Through this narrow opening poured darkness with substance, coalescing into a roughly humanoid shape composed of swirling void energy. Intriguing, the entity spoke, its voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The Emperor, the Guardian, and the Aberration, all gathered where boundaries thin. Chi-Chi extended the power pole to combat length, channeling Guardian Ki through the ancient weapon. Identify yourself, intruder. The void entity's form rippled with what might have been amusement. Names are constructs of ordered reality. I exist beyond such limitations. Its attention shifted to Goku. The Emperor knows me, though not by name. We have opposed each other since the division. Goku's expression hardened, power intensifying around him. You're the ITY being summoned through the convergence ritual. The one manipulating the architect. Manipulating. No. Guiding an adherent WHO recognizes fundamental truth. Reality was never meant to be divided. The entity expanded, darkness spreading across the clearing's upper boundary like an unnatural canopy. You maintain artificial separation that denies existence its true potential. Android 21 adjusted her scanner, analyzing the manifestation with scientific precision despite the obvious danger. Fascinating. It's not fully present. This is merely a projection utilizing residual void energy from the breach site. Perceptive. Aberration. Neither living nor dead, neither mortal nor divine. Your existence challenges the very divisions I seek to eliminate. The entity's attention focused on Android 21 with unsettling intensity. You could serve the reunification willingly. Your nature already transcends artificial boundaries. Chi-Chi recognized the manipulation attempt immediately. Don't engage with it directly, she warned. Void entities distort perception through prolonged interaction. The darkness rippled again, portions extending downward like tentacles of pure shadow. The GU, Ardian Order always feared what they couldn't control. Knowledge without understanding. Maintaining boundaries without comprehending their purpose. Goku moved with sudden decision, golden crimson een. RGY erupting from his form in precisely controlled waves. Enough. This manifestation has no physical anchor in our reality. It can be dispelled. He thrust one hand forward, energy condensing into a sphere of pure imperial authority. By my right as Emperor of Heaven and Hell, I command your departure from this domain. The void entity recoiled momentarily before surging forward with renewed intensity. Imperial authority exists only within structured realms, usurper. The void recognizes no emperor. Darkness lashed toward Goku like solid projectiles. He deflected them with controlled energy bursts, each contact creating miniature shockwaves that rippled through the clearing. Chi-Chi didn't hesitate. While Goku engaged the entity directly, she implemented Guardian protocols for void manifestation. The power pole traced complex patterns in the air, each movement releasing carefully modulated ki that strengthened reality's fabric against further degradation. Android 21, she called, maintaining her defensive kata. Does your equipment include anything that can disrupt void energy cohesion? The scientist was already reconfiguring one of her devices. Theoretically, yes. My dimensional stabilizer can be reversed to create destructive resonance against void pattern energy. However, the effect radius is limited, and calibration requires. Details later. Chi-Chi interrupted as darkness lashed toward them. Approximate calibration now, refinement if we survive. Android 21's lips quirked in what might have been appreciation for practical priorities. Her fingers flew across the device's controls, making adjustments with superhuman precision. Emperor Goku, she called, I need approximately 40 seconds to achieve minimum effective calibration. Goku nodded once, understanding the requirement without further explanation. His next attack pattern shifted from defensive deflection to aggressive containment, imperial energy forming a hemispherical barrier that momentarily constrained the void entity's movements. Chi-Chi, he directed, purification compound on my mark. Target the entity's central mass when I create the opening. Chi-Chi moved into position, guardian compound ready for deployment. The void entity struggled against Goku's energy barrier, darkness probing for weaknesses with increasing desperation. You cannot banish what predates your existence, Emperor, it hissed. Voice distorting as pressure increased. I am the truth beneath illusion, the reality behind your constructed order. Save the cosmic philosophy, Goku replied with unexpected casualness. Hands maintaining perfect form despite obvious strain. Your monologuing needs work. The entity reacted with surging darkness, portions of its form compressing into jagged projectiles that pounded against the containment barrier. Cracks appeared in the golden crimson energy, spreading rapidly as void power intensified. Android 21, Goku asked, voice steady despite escalating pressure. 30 seconds to minimum calibration, she reported, attention entirely focused on her instrument despite chaos erupting around her. Containment breach imminent based on current degradation rate. Chi-Chi assessed tactical options, Guardian training offering specific protocols for containment failure scenarios. Without speaking, she moved to strengthen Goku's barrier, the power pole. Tracing boundary reinforcement patterns that integrated Guardian Ki with Imperial energy. The combination created unexpected resonance, Goku's raw power finding perfect complement in Chi-Chi's precision technique. The containment barrier stabilized momentarily, cracks sealing as the two energy types synchronized. Impressive adaptation, Android 21 noted without looking up from her calibration work. Theoretical models suggested energy incompatibility between Guardian and Imperial signatures, but practical application demonstrates harmonic reinforcement instead. The void entity noticed this collaboration with apparent alarm. Its attacks shifted from raw force to targeted disruption, focusing specifically on points where Guardian and Imperial energies merged. The division must be maintained for control, but unified for destruction, it observed with disturbing insight. Your cooperation reveals the fundamental contradiction in your cosmic order. Philosophy later, Goku replied through gritted teeth. Chi-Chi, prepare for coordinated strike. When I create the opening, deploy compound directly to its core. Ready, she confirmed, shifting stance for optimal deployment trajectory. Android 21, Goku asked again. Calibration at 73% of optimal. Sufficient for disruption effect but duration limited to approximately 12 seconds. Her fingers continued their precise adjustments. Inform me when deployment window approaches. The void entity redoubled its assault, perhaps sensing their preparation for counterattack. Darkness hammered against the containment barrier from multiple angles simultaneously, creating a dissonant shrieking as reality itself protested the void energy concentration. Goku's expression showed focus rather than strain as he maintained the barrier against escalating pressure. On my mark, he said calmly. Android 21 deploys first, creating disruption field. I'll open targeted pathway through the barrier. Chi-Chi delivers purification compound to the core. Execution in 3. Chi-Chi settled into perfect readiness, compound poised for deployment. 2. Android 21 positioned her device, final calibrations complete. 1. The void entity seemed to sense their intention, darkness pulling back momentarily before surging toward a perceived weakness in the barrier. Now, the coordinated attack unfolded with precision. That suggested long practice rather than first collaboration. Android 21 activated her device, sending precisely calibrated energy waves through a small opening Goku created in the barrier. The waves disrupted the void entity's cohesion, causing momentary destabilization that revealed its core structure. Simultaneously, Goku opened a narrow channel through the containment barrier, creating a direct path to the entity's central mass. Chi-Chi launched through this opening, Guardian compound propelled by precisely focused ki that maintained its integrity despite void exposure. The crystalline powder struck the entity's core, activating on contact with void energy. Purification reaction propagated outward from impact point, forcing void components to separate from dimensional anchor points. No, the entity's form began dissolving where the compound spread, darkness fragmenting into dissipating wisps. This vessel fails, but the convergence approaches. 7 breaches, 7 sacrifices, the seal awakens. Goku seized the opportunity, imperial energy surging through the opening Chi-Chi had created. Return to the void, he commanded, authority resonating through every word. Your manifestation ends now. The combined effect of Guardian Compound, Android 21's disruption field, and Goku's imperial banishment created cascading dissolution. The void entity's form collapsed inward, darkness retreating through the dimensional incision through which it had entered. I depart willingly, Emperor, for this confrontation was merely reconnaissance, the entity declared as it faded. We have learned much about your alliance. The architect will adjust accordingly. With a final ripple of darkness, the manifestation vanished completely, the dimensional incision sealing itself as void energy dissipated. Silence fell across the clearing as all 3 allies maintained vigilance for potential resumption of attack. After 30 seconds of nothing, Goku finally lowered the containment barrier. Power receding to manageable levels. It's gone, he confirmed, senses extended to detect any residual presence. Though not defeated, merely banished temporarily. Android 21 immediately began scanning the area where the entity had manifested. As it stated, this was reconnaissance. It sacrificed a minor projection to assess our capabilities and alliance dynamics. Chi-Chi secured the remaining purification compound, mind already analyzing tactical implications. It specifically mentioned our cooperation as significant. The combination of our different powers created stronger effect than it anticipated. Which means our alliance represents genuine threat to its plans, Goku observed, joining Android 21 in surveying the manifestation site. It will adjust strategy accordingly. More concerning is what it learned. Android 21 noted, reviewing collected data. It now possesses direct observational data regarding Guardian techniques, my technological capabilities, and Imperial energy application parameters. Chi-Chi frowned, meaning it can develop specific countermeasures against each approach. Potentially, Android 21 acknowledged. However, it also revealed valuable information about itself. The manifestation's reaction to our combined assault confirms theoretical vulnerability to multi-domain attack strategies. She gestured toward her instruments. The ERG samples I collected before and during the manifestation provide crucial insight into both the entity's composition and the modified convergence ritual. With proper analysis, we can develop targeted countermeasures. Goku nodded. We should complete the purification protocol for this site, then proceed to the Guardian Temple for secure analysis. Chi-Chi retrieved the purification compound, surveying the contaminated area with experienced assessment. Standard application requires treating approximately 7 square meters surrounding the breach point. With void-receptive materials embedded throughout, we'll need to expand treatment radius significantly. I can assist with distribution, Goku offered. Imperial energy can carry the compound deeper into contaminated Earth than conventional application. Android 21 completed her scanning, attention turning to the practical matter of site purification. I recommend treating subterranean layers first. Void contamination travels due W-N-ward following gravitational influence before spreading laterally through compatible materials. Chi-Chi appreciated the scientist's practical insight, another indication that despite her clinical demeanor, Android 21 understood field operations beyond pure theory. Agreed. We'll implement layered purification protocols starting with deepest contamination. The three allies positioned themselves at strategic points around the breach site, each contributing specialized expertise to the purification process. Chi-Chi provided the compound and guardian key harmonics necessary for activation. Goku supplied power and precise control for deep penetration. Android 21 monitored contamination levels and effectiveness in real time, guiding adjustments as needed. The collaborative effort proceeded with surprising efficiency, each participant anticipating others' needs with minimal verbal communication. Chi-Chi found herself impressed by this natural cooperation despite their vastly different natures and backgrounds. As they worked, Android 21 observed, the entity's familiarity with all three of us suggests extensive surveillance prior to this confrontation. It knew of our alliance before direct observation, implying information sources beyond the cultists we captured, Goku agreed, continuing his precise energy application. The architect's network is more extensive than initially assessed. Chi-Chi considered this disturbing possibility while maintaining the purification rhythm. The Guardian records mention void entities using eyes in the living world, individuals partially corrupted by void exposure who serve as unwitting observation points. Biological remote viewing, Android 21 translated into scientific terminology. Modification of neural pathways to create sensory links across dimensional boundaries. Theoretically possible, though ethically problematic. Ethics rarely concern void entities, Goku noted dryly, completing another purification circuit. If they're using modified humans as surveillance tools, identifying them becomes priority. The purification process continued for approximately 40 minutes until Android 21's instruments confirmed complete removal of void-receptive materials from the site. The clearing looked unchanged physically, but Chi-Chi's guardian senses detected healthy restoration of normal dimensional integrity. Purification complete, she confirmed, securing her remaining supplies. This location can no longer serve as easy breach point. 1 down, 6 potential sites remaining, Goku observed. Though after this confrontation, our opponent will likely accelerate plans for the remaining breaches. Android 21 carefully packed her equipment, preserving collected samples with meticulous precision. We should proceed to secure analysis location immediately. The void entity's appearance suggests escalating timeline for the convergence attempt. Chi-Chi nodded, retrieving the Kintoon seed from her pocket. Guardian Temple remains our best option. Its boundary protections should prevent similar void manifestations during analysis. Agreed, Goku said, though we should assume our movements are being observed. Direct transit might be safer than Kintoon this time. Less time in transitional space where void entities have advantage. Android 21 considered this assessment, head tilted in that distinctive not quite human manner. The Emperor's transit method would indeed minimize exposure during dimensional crossing. However, it leaves distinctive energy signature that could be tracked to the temple location. The temple's cloaking protections should mitigate that concern, Chi-Chi decided after brief consideration. Guardian defenses are specifically designed to obscure dimensional transit signatures. Goku nodded. Then I'll transport us directly. Stay close. Chi-Chi and Android 21 moved beside him, maintaining physical contact as golden crimson energy gathered around all three. Kai noticed how Goku carefully modulated his power output, containing potentially overwhelming imperial energy to protect his mortal and semi-mortal companions during transit. Reality shifted around them, dimensional boundaries parting with controlled precision rather than forceful disruption. The transition felt markedly different from Kintoon travel, more direct but less natural, imposing order on dimensional space rather than following existing currents. Within moments, they materialized at the Guardian Temple's outer perimeter, where ancient stone markers established the first layer of protective boundaries. Chi-Chi immediately sensed the defenses responding to their arrival, recognizing her guardian's signature while cautiously analyzing her companions. Interesting, Android 21 observed, already scanning their surroundings. The temple defenses possess rudimentary consciousness, environmental awareness beyond simple trigger response mechanisms. Guardian sanctums develop sentience over centuries of ki impregnation, Chi-Chi explained, leading them toward the main entrance. The boundaries learn to distinguish between various supernatural energies and adjust responses accordingly. She placed her palm against the seemingly solid rock face, channeling specific ki sequences that communicated with the temple's defenses. Reality rippled, revealing the ancient structure, seamlessly integrated with the mountainside. "Welcome to the Guardian Temple of the Eastern Boundary," Chi-Chi announced as the entrance materialized before them. Established in the aftermath of the First Convergence War as primary monitoring station for this hemisphere, Android 21 entered with obvious scientific fascination, instruments already analyzing the temple's unique properties. Reamer, cable preservation of ancient energy patterns. The foundational architecture incorporates dimensional stabilization principles that predate formal understanding of such concepts. Goku followed more contemplatively, his expression suggesting recognition of techniques similar to those he'd encountered in previous eras. "Your ancestors built well. These defenses would challenge even Imperial-class entities if fully activated." Chi-Chi felt unexpected pride at their appreciation for her order's achievements. Despite initial reservations about this alliance, she found herself increasingly convinced of its necessity and potential effectiveness. The temple responded to her presence, illumination systems activating as they proceeded toward the central chamber. Ancient mechanisms hummed with renewed purpose, sensing the Guardian's return accompanied by powerful allies. In the main chamber, Chi-Chi gestured toward the large stone table at its center. This analysis surface was designed specifically for boundary research. Its composition includes materials from all three primary realms, creating neutral examination environment for interdimensional phenomena. Android 21 approached the table with evident approval. "Perfect for our needs. The mixed realm materials will prevent sample contamination during analysis." She began unpacking her equipment with efficient precision. "All need approximately 20 minutes to establish proper analytical environment." Goku moved to examine the temple's defensive array, professional interest evident in his assessment. "These ward configurations are remarkable. Some predate techniques currently used in Heaven's defensive systems. The Guardian Order developed many boundary protection methods later adopted by supernatural realms," Chi-Chi explained. Preparing traditional analysis tools to complement Android 21's technology. Practical necessity drove innovation during the early Convergence Wars. As they established the analysis station, the collaborative dynamic that had emerged during the Void Entity confrontation continued developing. Android 21 focused on precise scientific procedures while explaining key concepts in accessible terminology. Chi-Chi provided historical context and traditional techniques that complemented technological approaches. Goku contributed strategic assessment and interdimensional expertise gained through centuries of experience. This natural cooperation struck Chi-Chi as significant, three individuals from vastly different backgrounds finding effective collaboration against common threat. P.S. This was what the Void Entity had feared when noting their alliance with such concern. Android 21 completed her equipment setup, crystalline analysis devices humming in harmony with the temple's ancient energies. "Ready for primary sample examination," she announced, removing the carefully preserved void energy samples from specialized containment. The collected energy, swirling darkness contained within transparent crystal, pulsed with disturbing rhythm as she transferred it to the analysis surface. Chi-Chi activated the temple's boundary reinforcement protocols as precaution against potential contamination. Initial molecular scan commencing, Android 21 reported, fingers dancing across holographic controls with inhuman precision. Compositional analysis will identify specific Void S signature components and potential correlations with known entities. Goku positioned himself at strategic distance, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to avoid Imperial energy interference with sensitive measurements. Focus particularly on historical match patterns. If this entity existed before the division, records might remain in Imperial archives. Cross-referencing capabilities would be helpful. Android 21 acknowledged, adjusting her scanners. Guardian, does your temple maintain connection to other Order archives? Comparative analysis across multiple Guardian records might reveal recognition patterns. Chi-Chi moved to an ancient pedestal in the chamber's corner, activating a mechanism that hadn't been used in generations. The Resonance Archive contains echoes from all Guardian temples, even those destroyed during the Purge. Their knowledge wasn't entirely lost, merely dispersed. The pedestal glowed with soft blue light as ancient connections re-established after centuries of dormancy. Information began flowing into the temple's systems, fragmentary but valuable records from Guardian sanctums long thought destroyed. Fascinating preservation method, Android 21 observed with genuine appreciation. Distributed knowledge safeguarding through dimensional resonance rather than physical storage. Chi-Chi nodded, unexpectedly moved by this restoration of her Order's collective wisdom. Guardian knowledge belongs to all boundaries, not single locations. Even when temples fell, their discoveries persisted through these connections. She directed the AC. Cumulated information toward Android 21's analysis station, ancient records interfacing with advanced technology in surprising harmony. These records contain observations from previous convergence at temps across all Guardian jurisdictions. Android 21 integrated this new data stream with efficient precision. Excellent. Pattern recognition algorithms now have sufficient historical baseline for meaningful comparison. The analysis proceeded with increasing momentum as traditional Guardian knowledge combined with advanced scientific methodology and Imperial cosmic awareness. Holographic project. Actions materialized above the stone table, displaying energy patterns, historical correlations, and predictive models simultaneously. Preliminary findings suggest specific entity identification, Android 21 announced after several minutes of intensive analysis. The Void signature contains markers consistent with records from the First Division era. Chi-Chi examined the displayed patterns with growing concern. These configurations match descriptions in our oldest texts, what my ancestors called the Unmaker. Goku moved closer, expression grave as he studied the evidence. In Imperial records, this entity appears under different designation. Void Lord Xenoverse, one of the ancient antagonists present during the original separation of realms. Nomenclature varies across historical records, but pattern consistency confirms single entity identification, Android 21 concluded, continuing her analysis. More concerning is the modified summoning approach being implemented through the convergence breaches. She highlighted specific energy structures within the Void sample. Traditional convergence creates general boundary dissolution. This modified version establishes directed pathway specifically calibrated to Xenoverse's Void signature, essentially creating personalized bridge between domains. Explaining the 7 breach requirement, Goku noted, not for general convergence but for targeted extraction from the void between. Chi-Chi processed these revelations against Guardian knowledge. The texts describe Xenoverse as that which unmakes creation, a fundamental opposition to structured reality itself. If successfully summoned, reality restructuring on cosmic scale, Android 21 confirmed dispassionately, though Chi-Chi detected subtle tension in her otherwise perfect posture. Not merely destruction but fundamental rewriting of existence parameters according to Void principles. Which explains our mysterious architect's motivation, Goku concluded. Someone who believes current reality is flawed and seeks complete cosmic reset. Chi-Chi frowned, connecting scattered information points. The possessed cultist mentioned 7 breaches, 7 sacrifices. The convergence ritual traditionally requires blood sacrifice at each breach point to establish initial connection.